I still remember the day my world shattered. My family, the people I trusted the most, had written me off as if I were nothing. I was sitting in my small apartment, scrolling through messages that cut deeper than any knife. They had decided, without a second thought, that I didn't deserve my share of the family inheritance. My own parents and siblings had decided that I was a lost cause, unworthy, disposable. And at that moment, I felt something ignite inside me, a fire that refused to be ignored. If they thought I was weak, they were gravely mistaken. My name might have been erased from their plans, but I was not finished yet. Before I go any further, I want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe to RevengeCast. It would mean a lot, and you won't miss the story of my comeback. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. It makes this even more real. I started at the very bottom, working odd jobs, taking small steps, and quietly learning everything I could. They didn't see me struggling, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I became someone they could never imagine, someone unstoppable. Every rejection, every cold shoulder, every sarcastic remark became fuel for my ambition. People around me started noticing a change. I wasn't just surviving, I was transforming. But this wasn't about revenge in the obvious sense, it was about proving to myself that I could rise higher than anyone ever expected. And while they laughed, I planned. My evenings were spent plotting ways to turn their own arrogance against them. I learned about investments, real estate, and businesses. I networked, not for friends, but for opportunities that would one day give me the power I needed. I remember the first time I saw them after months of being written off. They didn't recognize me, not fully. My confidence, my poise, the way I carried myself, it was different. And inside, I was smiling because I knew the story was about to change. The day they ignored me, the day they declared I had no claim, that day became the start of my strategy. I became patient, calculated, and precise. I knew that striking too early would ruin everything. They had underestimated me, and underestimation is a dangerous mistake. I began documenting everything, their businesses, their habits, the cracks in their seemingly perfect lives. I turned their arrogance into my blueprint. And slowly, without them knowing, I started moving closer to taking what was rightfully mine. It was hard to hide the fire I felt inside. At work, at home, everywhere I went, I carried this secret energy, this silent storm. Some people could sense it, but no one dared ask. And when I finally got an opportunity to invest in a local business that my family had laughed at, I grabbed it. That tiny victory felt like the first domino falling. I reinvested, expanded, and learned to play the game they thought I didn't even know existed. Every dollar, every decision, was building towards something bigger. I wasn't just growing wealth, I was growing power, influence, and confidence. And one day, they would have no choice but to see me. And that's where my journey truly begins, with them oblivious to the storm I was building. The laughter, the dismissive glances, the underestimations, they all became invisible bricks that I stacked to build my empire. This is a story about betrayal, resilience, and a comeback so sharp it will make anyone rethink the choices they make about people they dismiss. Stay with me because what's coming next will make you question what you thought was possible when someone fights not for revenge, but for justice. Months turned into a year, and my life was changing in ways no one could predict. I had built a reputation quietly, without flashing money or success in anyone's face. I wanted them to see me when I was ready, not before. I remember the day I first walked into a boardroom as an investor, holding my head high, surrounded by influential people. The same people my family thought I could never reach. I could feel the satisfaction bubbling inside me, but I kept it in check. Patience had become my ally. Every decision I made, every connection I nurtured, was part of a larger plan. Meanwhile, my family continued living their predictable, careless lives. They trusted that I was still struggling, that my dreams had crashed against the harsh reality they thought awaited me. Little did they know, I had become unstoppable. I started strategically acquiring assets they had ignored, businesses they had written off, and investments they thought were beneath them. And as my portfolio grew, so did my confidence. I practiced subtlety. I didn't need to shout my success, I needed it to hit where it mattered most, at the perfect time. There was one moment that stood out during this period, a dinner where my parents and siblings were discussing a new investment opportunity. They laughed, mocked, and dismissed the idea. I was seated at the edge, silent, observing every word, every gesture. And I knew exactly what to do. I had already invested in a rival business, one that would soon overtake theirs. The irony was delicious. They were completely unaware that the seed of their downfall was quietly growing, nurtured by the very person they had cast aside. And it thrilled me, not because I hated them, but because I had been underestimated. During this time, I also strengthened my personal life. I surrounded myself with people who inspired me, mentors who guided me, and networks that expanded my reach. Every day, I grew smarter, sharper, more resourceful. I learned negotiation tactics, business strategy, and even subtle psychological techniques that would later become critical in my plan. And the most important lesson I learned was about timing. Power is useless if not wielded with precision, and revenge, when it's calculated, becomes art. But it wasn't just about the business. It was about self-discovery. I realized that my value was never dependent on their recognition. Their rejection had fueled me, but the strength I gained was mine alone. I became resilient, courageous, and unapologetic. And slowly, I started seeing the first cracks in their armor, the mistakes, the carelessness, the overconfidence. It was like watching a house built on sand slowly tremble under the weight of reality. And through it all, I never lost my focus. Every meeting, every decision, every calculated move brought me closer to the moment when I would confront them, not in anger, but in undeniable triumph. They had assumed my story ended when they wrote me off. They had no idea it was only beginning. And by the time I was ready to return, everything would have changed. The moment I decided it was time to make my move, I didn't hesitate. I had grown into a woman they could never imagine, smart, confident, and unstoppable. I walked into my family's world quietly at first, blending in, learning the rhythms, and observing their blind spots. They laughed at my absence, dismissed my achievements, and assumed I was still insignificant. Little did they know, I held the cards they had foolishly thrown away. It all started with small confrontations, subtle reminders that I was no longer powerless. A meeting here, a business acquisition there. I watched their reactions carefully, noting their surprise, their discomfort. Every small victory gave me the momentum I needed. I could see the fear in their eyes when they realized I had grown beyond their comprehension. And that fear fueled me even more. One day, I faced the moment I had been waiting for, a family gathering where they openly mocked my so-called failures. I smiled, calm and composed, and shared a quiet update about a business acquisition that had just outperformed their company. The room went silent. Their arrogance had blinded them to my growth, and now, the truth hit them like a thunderbolt. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I simply let the reality speak for itself. And in that silence, I saw the realization dawn, I was no longer the person they could control or dismiss. From that day on, everything changed. I leveraged the knowledge and resources I had acquired over the past years. I became indispensable in circles they had once dominated. The investments I made, the businesses I nurtured, and the people I connected with all contributed to a rising empire that they had ignored. Every step of the way, I reminded myself that patience, precision, and perseverance were the real tools of power. And slowly, I began taking back everything they had written off, one piece at a time. What they didn't anticipate was the elegance of my strategy. I didn't seek to humiliate them openly, I let my success do that naturally. It was about reclaiming what was mine, proving my worth, and showing them that underestimation is a dangerous mistake. I had turned their rejection into fuel, and their laughter into motivation. Every glance of surprise, every whispered comment about my achievements, became a testament to my journey. And just when they thought they could recover, I made my most strategic move yet. I acquired a company they had planned to buy, leaving them shocked and scrambling. The feeling of victory was indescribable, not because I wanted revenge for revenge's sake, but because I had outsmarted them, risen above, and claimed what I deserved. RevengeCast has been documenting this journey, and it reminds me daily that perseverance and strategy always pay off. By now, I was fully in control of the narrative. My family couldn't ignore me even if they tried. They had assumed that I was weak, but the person they had underestimated was now unstoppable. My presence alone was enough to shift dynamics, influence decisions, and make them reconsider every choice they had made. And it wasn't just about wealth, it was about respect, recognition, and empowerment. I remember a confrontation with my father that could have been explosive. Instead, I remained composed. I calmly outlined the businesses I had acquired, the deals I had made, and the investments I had strategically executed. He couldn't argue, the numbers spoke for themselves. And as I looked around at my siblings, their faces reflected disbelief, admiration, and a touch of fear. They had ignored me, but now, they had to respect me. It wasn't easy. Every step required planning, patience, and careful execution. There were moments of doubt, moments when the pressure felt unbearable. But I remembered why I started. I remembered the days of humiliation, the nights of struggle, and the fire that had been ignited inside me when they wrote me off. That fire never went out, it only grew stronger, brighter, and sharper. And it guided me through every obstacle. With every victory, I also began helping others, mentoring people who had been dismissed or overlooked. I realized that true empowerment isn't just about reclaiming your own power, it's about creating opportunities for others. And that realization made me stronger, more confident, and more grounded. I wasn't just taking back what was mine, I was building a legacy that couldn't be ignored. The final phase of my comeback was the most satisfying. Every person who had doubted me, every relative who had turned their back, now had to face the truth. I had become someone they could neither ignore nor challenge. And the best part? I did it with grace, intelligence, and unwavering determination. The story of my rise from being written off to reclaiming everything became more than personal, it became a testament to resilience, strategy, and self-belief. Today, as I look back on the journey, I can hardly recognize the person I used to be. The girl who was dismissed, ignored, and underestimated has transformed into a woman who commands respect and has reclaimed her place in the world. My family learned a lesson they will never forget, not through confrontation, but through undeniable achievement. And I learned that patience, strategy, and self-belief are the most powerful tools anyone can have. I hope my story inspires you. If you've ever been written off, dismissed, or underestimated, know that your story isn't over. There's power in persistence, strategy in patience, and strength in believing in yourself. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to RevengeCast. Your support keeps these stories alive and motivates me to bring even more incredible comebacks to you. Before we finish, I want you to comment below and share this video. Tell me your story of resilience, your own experiences of being underestimated, and how you rose above. Sharing this will not only inspire others but also remind you of your own strength. Every story matters, every comeback counts, and every voice deserves to be heard. This isn't just my story, it could be yours too. And together, we prove that no one should ever be underestimated.